Unveiling the endless enmity of Muslim peoples against Western countries. A lot of people have different thoughts on the trouble in the Middle East. But not many people, maybe even the partners involved, can say for sure what will happen in the future. There are too many unknowns in the Middle East problem, so it is naturally hard to solve. Taking a look at one of these unknowns makes guesswork even less useful. The main reason is that history is like a blank surface, on which today's bright and beautiful drawings are painted. Although it began in the 7th century, Islam has always been against the Vatican. People in the area were very open to Islam and eagerly followed it, because of the Vatican's nature and cruel and barbaric actions. Because of that, Islam got stronger and beat the Roman Church. Along with North Africa, most of the Middle East and parts of Southern Europe, like Spain, were under Islam by the 11th century. It was because of that the Roman Church could only operate in Europe. Hello and welcome to today's video, where we're going to discuss about the subject, unveiling the endless enmity of Muslim peoples against Western countries. But before we dive into that, make sure you subscribe to my channel, and hit the bell icon to get notified whenever I upload a new video. And if you enjoy this video, please give it a thumbs up, and share it with your friends. Let's go on. The Crusades began in 1095 when Pope Urban II, 1088 to 1099, asked European countries to send troops to the Middle East to take back Palestine. This war went on until 1293 and killed a lot of people, and caused a lot of pain and suffering for the countries that were involved, most of which were Muslim. The West made friends with Muslim groups for the first time. Allied countries like Britain, France, and the US defeated the Axis forces of Germany, Italy, and Japan in 1945. In 1947, they cut off part of the British region Palestine, and forced the local Palestinians to move to Israel. The Palestinians and Muslims were very unhappy with this move, and were very angry at the British, French, and Americans. This is the third time that Christian Western countries have turned Muslims against each other. Ever since the country was founded again in 1947, Israel has had a hostile attitude toward Muslim countries in the area. This has made ties between Israel and Muslim countries always tense. A lot of hot fights have broken out because of this. When there is a fight in the area between Israel and a Muslim country, Britain, the United States, and France always stand with Israel against the Muslim country. So, people who follow Islam are enemies of people who live in Western countries that follow Christianity. It was 2003, and President George W. Bush sent troops to attack Iraq, on the grounds that it had mass-destroying weapons. The Sunni Muslim government was destroyed, and President Saddam Hussein was killed and killed many people, and caused a lot of pain and suffering for the people of Iraq. The important thing is that the US government and its partners haven't been able to show proof that Iraq has the kinds of weapons that President Bush said were bad and used as a reason to attack Iraq until now. More specifically, President Bush called this a crusade on the same day that troops were sent to attack Iraq. Of course, sending troops to attack Iraq in a way that would destroy it, and making such a statement by President Bush not only made people hate Muslims, but it also brought back old hatreds that people had never let go of. They toward Christianity and the United States and Europe, to keep Islam in check in the Middle East and North Africa for decades. The US has done the following. 1. Putting Israel in the Middle East as a gendarmerie. The UN General Assembly met on November 29, 1947, and decided on Resolution number 181, which changed the land that Jews and Palestinians lived on. Israel became a new country, and the United States used it as a gendarmerie to keep the Middle East and North Africa under control. The US gives Israel a huge amount of money every year. After speaking with Washington on July 29, 2007, Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Olmert said that the US had given Israel new military help worth up to $30 billion over the next 10 years to keep its military edge in the area. $30 billion spread out over 10 years is $3 billion a year. Besides that, the US also gives Israel the most modern weapons. The Haaretz newspaper in Israel said that the US gave Israel 5,000 smart bombs. When it goes off, This bomb is directed by a satellite and a laser. From June 5 to June 11, 1967, a six-day war broke out between Israel and Egypt. During that time, Israel took control of the Sinai Peninsula, the Gaza Strip, the west bank of the Jordan River, which included the Old City of Jerusalem and the Golan Heights. That's because of better guns. 2. Backing a war between two Muslim countries. The Iraqi army struck Iran out of the blue on September 22, 1980, and took over some of that country's oil-rich land. President Saddam Hussein thought at first that the war would end quickly because the West and some Arab countries in the area backed him. But in March 1982, after the army was rebuilt, Iran began a strike that took back land that Iraq had taken. The war went on for 8 years, ending on August 20, 1988, when a ceasefire was signed for two main reasons. First, Khomeini, the boss of Iran, was a determined enemy who was hard to beat. Second, the U.S. has backed both groups to get what they wanted. The U.S. Congress opened the Iran-Contra case in 1987. It showed that the U.S. both helped Iraq fight Iran and gave weapons to Iran, supposedly to get money to cover the cost of supporting the Nicaraguan resistance. When things calmed down, more than 2,000 rockets and extra parts were sent to Iran. Even after the war was over, the two sides were still at odds with each other and constantly argued. But this fight seemed to be over after President Bush invaded Iraq in 2003. 3. Trying to control Islam by using military and dictatorial states. For decades, the U.S. has backed tyrants and militarists in the Middle East and North Africa to keep them in power, so that radical Muslim groups can't take over those countries. These leaders always use neutral powers to protect their power. The church leader was left out. Al-Gaddafi in Libya, Hosni Mubarak in Egypt, Ben Ali in Tunisia, Abdallah Saleh in Yemen, and Hafez al-Assad in Syria are all tyrants and warlords that the U.S. recognizes. Western countries also help these leaders keep radical Muslim groups in check. The U.S. used the Jasmine Revolution in Tunisia to get rid of Mubarak in Egypt. Now, it's causing new problems in the Middle East and North Africa, which could bring down the governments that the U.S. wants to keep in place. Watch out. In the 2008 U.S. presidential election, American businessmen threw out Hillary Rodham Clinton and chose Barack Obama, with the goal of fixing the problems caused by President George W. Bush's war in Iraq hasn't been caused since 2003. The Islamist bloc saw this attack as a war against them and a fight against Islam. A lot of people hope that Mr. Obama can reconcile with Islam. He was born in Kenya, which is in East Africa, and went to school in Jakarta, Indonesia, which has the most Muslims of any country in the world. Obama said the following in his winning speech on January 20, 2009. Our country is at war, fighting a broad network of violence and hate. This is partly because some people are greedy and careless. But it's also because we failed to prepare the country for the new era by making the hard choices that were needed. This is a general outline of how he planned to do things. We want to find a new way forward for the Muslim world that is based on shared values and respect for each other. In later talks, Obama made his stance known in two important ones. The first one was in Egypt on April 6, 2009. And the second one was in Indonesia on November 10, 2010. It was a 55-minute speech at Cairo University that was sent live to more than 1.5 billion Muslims around the world. Here's what he said at the beginning. I came here to try to start over with the relationship between the United States and the Muslim world. People in the US and Muslims need to stop being skeptical and work together to stop all kinds of deadly radicalism. About the Iraq War, he said that the US had a plan to get out of it. All US troops will leave Iraqi towns by July of this year. And all US troops will leave the country by no later than 2012. In terms of Afghanistan, he decided that the US has no plans to keep a stable military base there and that military power will not solve the problem. Instead, economic growth is what needs to happen. When asked about the conflict between Israel and Palestine, he said that the Jewish-Palestinian problem could only be solved by two countries recognizing each other and living together. This would be good for Israel, Palestine, the US, and everyone else in the world. When it came to each country's government system, he found, no country has the right to impose a political regime on another country. However, the United States believes that a country's political regime should reflect the will of the people, even if that means expressing that will in a different way in each country. The United States cannot decide which choice is best for a country, or which electoral candidate or party should be chosen. The most important issue is religion, and he says that religion should go hand in hand with religion, even between different branches of the same religion. He pointed out that it's strange that Islam thinks that anyone who doesn't follow its religion is evil. And some European countries are also strict about making laws that Muslim women can't wear veils. These are mostly ethical textbook statements from Mr. Obama. Things aren't that simple in real life. A spokesman for Hamas in the Gaza Strip and a representative of the Lebanese group Hezbollah said, the speech showed that nothing has changed in U.S. policy. And Mr. Mohammed Habib, deputy leader of the Muslim Brotherhood, the most powerful group in the Arab bloc, said, President Obama's trip would have no point if U.S. policy toward the Arab and Muslim world hadn't changed in real ways first. Politics isn't made up of flowery speeches, it's made up of actions. President Obama took it easy at the University of Indonesia in Jakarta. Here's what he said. Today, I return to Indonesia not only as a friend, but also as a president who is seeking deep and lasting cooperation between the two countries. There hasn't been a good bond between the U.S. and Muslims for a long time. I have made it my job as president to start fixing that connection. I think our efforts are sincere and keep going. We don't think we'll be able to get rid of all the mistakes and fears that have built up over time. But we think our road is the right one. No one believes Mr. Obama can reconciliate, because he has never negotiated or dealt with Islam. So the fall of the authoritarian and militaristic system in the Middle East and North Africa, which the U.S. used to control radical Islamic groups, is making the U.S. look even worse. The Bahrain model is troubled. Bahrain is an archipelago in the Persian Gulf made up of 35 small islands, each 30 kilometers long. It is 24 kilometers from the east coast of Saudi Arabia and 28 kilometers from the west coast of Qatar. The total area is 688 square kilometers, and there are only 688,345 people living there, including 235,108 people who are not Bahraini citizens but live there anyway. Because this is a key strategic location, the U.S. has put its Fifth Fleet here to control the Middle East and North Africa. Bahrain is a constitutional monarchy, and King Sheikh Hamad bin Isa Al Khalifa is in charge. Prime Minister Sheikh Khalifa bin Salman Al Khalifa is in charge of the government, and he has 15 ministers under him. Bahrain has two houses of government. The Assembly of Representatives, Majlis and Nuwab, is chosen by the people, and the Advisory Council, Majlis al-Shura, is chosen by the king. Each house has 40 members. The first election was held in 2002, and Council of Delegates members serve for 4 years. There are up to 81.2% Muslims in Bahrain, 9% Christians, and 9.8% people who follow other Asian and Middle Eastern faiths. Recently, Bahrain has become a multiracial society with many mixed communities. About 2/3 of the people living there are Arabs, and the rest are workers and immigrants from Iran, South Asia, and Southeast Asia. The country has also become home to many people who were persecuted in other countries. Islam is still the main religion, but people there live peacefully. Along with mosques, there are Christian churches, Indian Hindu temples, Sikh Shiite and Sunni, two Muslim groups, won all the seats in parliament in the 2002 election. Since then, Bahrain's democracy has been in chaos. The first thing these two groups want to do is make moral issues, i.e. Islamic law, part of national law. For example, they want to make it illegal to display mannequins in stores and hang women's underwear on a clothesline. They want to go further in applying Islamic Sharia. There are groups in Bahrain that are against the Islamization of the country. The Al-Muntada group started the We Have a Right campaign. Now the majority of Muslims, Shiite, are standing up for their democratic rights. On February 16, 2011, the head of the Shiite Association of the Islamic Nation, WIFAQ, called for giving up the right to choose high-level government officials and direct elections, especially the direct election of the Prime Minister. If these calls for democratization are granted, Muslim groups will take over the Bahraini government and set up an Islamic region. How do you get to Obama's road? At the moment, the Muslim bloc is split into two groups: the Muslim Brotherhood group and the Al-Qaeda group. The Muslim Brotherhood group wants to fight against the US and Western countries violently, while the Al-Qaeda group wants to fight peacefully. President Obama wants to reconcile with both groups. But a poll shows that 76% of Egyptians think the US wants to divide and weaken the Muslim world. Ayman al-Zawahiri is the second boss of Al-Qaeda, said that US President Barack Obama's actions have not changed how Muslims feel about the US. America has come at us with a new face, one that tries to confuse us. It's a face that wants change, but it wants us to change, too. So we have to give up our rights and beliefs. But the Americans don't change their policies, invasions, thefts, and scandals. But the Muslim Brotherhood group takes a more stable stance. Unlike Al-Qaeda, they don't openly oppose the US and Western countries. Instead, they support the peaceful evolution strategy, which means calling for implementation of democracy to slowly overthrow the dictatorship that the US and Western countries have set up in the Middle East and North Africa and replace them with Islamic regimes. This is the breviary that the Muslim Brotherhood and most Muslims follow. Allah is my God, Islam is my life, the Quran is my guide. The Prophet Muhammad is my example. The Sunnah, the Muslim way of life, is what I do. And jihad is what I believe in. Like in Iraq and Afghanistan now. The Islamic governments, they want to bring people back to the brutality of the 3rd and 4th centuries AD. There will not be a change to peaceful coexistence, as President Obama wants it to happen once the goal is set so clearly. Mideast and North African leaders know how to keep radical Muslim groups in check. When the Muslim Brotherhood group tried to take over Syria in 1982, President Hafez al-Assad destroyed many parts of the city of Hama with artillery, killing and hurting 10,000 to 25,000 people. The Muslim Brotherhood group was then banned from working, and President Mubarak also banned it from working in Egypt. However, the group has come back to carry out its plans. Other Muslim groups want to take over in Tunisia, Bahrain, Libya, or Yemen, just like the Muslim Brotherhood did. Fears have been raised by many experts about the situation of Muslims in the Middle East. At its meeting in Strasbourg on January 27, 2011, the European Parliament spoke out against religious radicalism and efforts to use religious beliefs for political gain. What is Islamic Sharia law? Islamic Sharia law, also known as Sharia or Sharia, is a body of moral and religious law that forms a part of Islam. It is derived from the religious precepts of Islam, particularly the Quran and the Hadith. The term Sharia comes from the Arabic language term Sharia, which means a path leading to the watering place. Sharia law is not merely a system of law but also a comprehensive code of behavior that embraces both private and public activities. It regulates the individual's relationship, not only with neighbors and with the state, but also with God and with the individual's own conscience. Ritual practices such as daily prayers, almsgiving, fasting, and pilgrimage are an integral part of Sharia law. The Sharia is concerned as much with ethical standards as with legal rules, indicating not only what an individual is entitled or bound to do in law but also what one ought, in conscience, to do or to refrain from doing. Accordingly, certain acts are classified as praiseworthy, which means that their performance brings divine favor, and their omission divine disfavor, and others as blameworthy, which has the opposite implications. In the 21st century, the role of Sharia has become an increasingly contested topic. Around the world, the manner of its application in modern times has been a subject of dispute between Muslim fundamentalists and progressives who argue that Sharia is compatible with democracy, human rights, minority rights, freedom of thought, women's rights, and banking. Please note that interpretations and applications of Sharia law can vary widely by country and community. The video for today is over. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Please subscribe, share, and like this video if you like it. Appreciate your continued viewing. Goodbye and have a nice day.